conversation is between Lina Duncan, birth and postnatal doula, and Ruth Dennison.
So hi Lina, and thank you for joining me today to have a discussion on how to be an ally for the Black community within the breastfeeding world. And so this is to go towards our great event, which is Black Breastfeeding Week 2020. And I just have a few questions for you just to ask you, because I've noticed how much work you do within the community and how much you promote equality and diversity within your work, and in regards to the injustice and supporting the justice for mothers to get justice within birth as well. So I would just like to speak with you and just Molly, in regards to seeing if you can describe what it is to be an ally, how it feels like to be an ally, what others can do to, be an ally. I know it might look different to everyone else, but Molly, in regards to what you do and what you find helps you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed your first event. What was it, like 2 years ago? I came to the first one.
Yes,
and I learned a lot there. And I think just by coming along, like I've been to a couple of events, quite a few events that you run as well, offline and online. I remember coming to one with Kimberly Alice Seals as well. Yeah. And I think just coming along for me was one of the kind of barriers, because I think as a white woman, I thought, oh, am I welcome in this space? Like I'm very conscious of being in spaces, like, am I welcome? Am I being intrusive as a white woman? I just felt very welcomed and very, it just felt like a very different space, actually, a very safe place for Black or brown people, which I think is really important. And now I'm very conscious of that wherever I am, because I feel like sometimes spaces aren't safe. And especially in hospitals, I really do notice, because of the things that I've learned from you and other people in workshops or just in discussions or on retreats or from reading. I do really notice when spaces aren't safe and how to facilitate it to become safer. Sometimes I do on reflection, I'm like, oh shit, I wish I'd done that. Like, like sometimes things happen, I'm like, oh gosh, like I can't quite believe something is happening when it's not very safe. Like, for example, recently I supported somebody, a Black woman, and she was, everything was going very well. But then when it came to breastfeeding, she was kind of putting the baby to her, she was getting on with it herself, and suddenly the midwife's hands were in there, like on her body and grabbing her. And I could feel like she was so uncomfortable. I could feel what I sensed, that the mum was quite uncomfortable with that. And I was so surprised what was happening. I didn't speak up in the moment. But when the midwife left the room, I said to the mum, are you okay with her like touching your breast like that? And she said, no, I don't like it. So I said, okay, if it happens again, please do speak up and say, please don't touch my breast. Like, I want to do it myself. Or if you want me to speak up, if you're finding it hard to speak up, or, you're concentrating and she comes in, I'll advocate for you if you want me to. But she said, no, I'll speak up. But it didn't happen again. But I was really, I don't know, I felt very conscious of that. Like, why don't people ask before they touch people? And I think it's even more important. Of course, I know when I support white women too, they don't like it if someone touches your boob. But I think because of the history that I've read about and I know about of, Black women and white women and all, things that have happened in the past, I just think we need to know that. Like, it's important as white people, white birth workers, that we know the history so that we can be conscious of what could be an issue.
Yeah, definitely. And in regards to, you did say things that you have read. have you read, and what would you find that is very, you know, that you've really taken on board? One of the books that you would, or, you know, if it was a post or an article which you found most powerful in regard to helping to navigate the way you work?
I think because when Kimberly Alice Seals came over, I bought her book, The Big Letdown, and reading the history of everything, the politics and the history. I know it's American history, but it's very much similar to here. And a lot of that history. So I just really learned a lot through reading her book. And just listening at that seminar, you know, the workshop that you did together.
Yeah.
It was really powerful just to hear women's voices. And I think unless as white people we put ourselves in a space, or, you know, go to workshops or attend online workshops, or, you know, nicer person to person. In person is nicer, obviously. But yeah, just listening really. I think I'm always learning something, but in the beginning it was more like putting myself and feeling uncomfortable sometimes, but that's part of the whole, you know, if we don't feel uncomfortable, we never learn anything, right? So I think being in a space where it might not be in my comfort zone, but actually realizing that a lot of black and brown people I've noticed since are quite often the only one or two in the room. Or, you know, when I play football, sometimes I notice, oh, there's only one black player today. You know, I notice things like that. So then it's like, oh, you know, to be to be in a minority ourselves is nothing compared to what is normal life in the UK. And just reading and hearing people's experiences of not being invited to go into the room and talk to a lactation consultant just because they were black. You know, that's not okay, that people are just the last to be. Quite often I just hear, you know, through reports or through reading or through listening, things like, you know, in a postnatal ward, the white people might be seen first. And I don't think it's always conscious, but it is a fact. So we need to, like, everyone needs to be on board to change that. Yeah, including the midwives and the staff, you know.
Definitely. And, you know, when you mentioned in regards to sometimes you did feel uncomfortable, and to learn, you do have to feel uncomfortable. What would you say was one of the worst times that you felt uncomfortable? Or, like, is there nothing, do you have a specific point of what maybe makes you uncomfortable and how you overcome that uncomfort? Or does it ever go away?
I think I can give you a couple of examples. So when I went on Mars's first retreat, I was so nervous. I was on the train thinking, what have I done? Like, why am I even going? I don't belong. Like, who do I think I am? Like, why am I going? And when I got there, it was amazing. Like, people were I've never been in such an environment. I can't really describe it. It just felt I felt very honored to be a part of that circle. And everything that I was scared about was nothing to be scared about. There was definitely discomfort, because learning and hearing what white people have done to black bodies in birth, in breastfeeding, in life, everywhere, is very uncomfortable. But that's part of the change, I think. Like learning as a white person the effects of white supremacy now and in history, and currently with the statistics and the outcomes and the experiences that I'm hearing of people giving birth and in the news, that's uncomfortable. That's never going to go away. Like the pain and the loss and the things that is coming out with the 5 times more movement, and just hearing more of the truth of what's going on. I think it's really important to hear it and to listen to it, but also to learn how to be in action. So I think that's one of the hardest parts. And like, I'm doing Nova Reid's, I've just done Nova Reid's anti-racism course, and I would say that was extremely uncomfortable, a lot. but it's necessary because I have to get rid of the stuff in me and my history and my family and the things that I've learned and the things that the things that are easy for me as a white person, and just realizing my whole world had so much and has so much privilege in it. That's very uncomfortable. Like, I'd rather not look at that, to be honest. But when I hear and I see the injustice of what's happening every day on the streets outside my house and in the schools around my area and in the hospitals and in our birthing world, then I realize, oh, this is a lifelong journey of action and discomfort. And I think everyone needs to do it. You know, anyone's involved in climate change, if we see injustice anywhere, then we should take action, whatever that action is for us. And there's many ways that we can get involved. It doesn't have to be, see, I just think we can support people like you as a white person. You know, what can we do in our community? We can, you know, what would be helpful for you to support you? What would, who are the people in our neighborhood who we know who's giving birth? How can we support them? How can we, you know, we can do, there's so many things going on now in the UK. I think there's no excuse really for not to support anything. Do you know what I mean? There's 5 times more. There's your work with Every Mother Matters. There's Mars and Abuela doulas. Like, there's ways to support people monthly, financially, as well as, you know, action. That is action.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And yeah, so in regards to what you said, in regards to how there is spaces where people will feel uncomfortable, I agree as well, is that if you don't find that discomfort, or you don't go into that discomfort, you're never going to see or visualize what that person that is having the injustice against them is going through. And you know, it does make you uncomfortable to know that actually, you know, when you said that, it's things that may be in your race, in your past, in your history, that has brought onto Black people. But then the discomfort that you're feeling, as you mentioned, is something that Black people has been basically feeling from birth, almost from birth, all the way throughout your life. And I think just sort of, not saying you specifically, but having that in your mind when as a white person, when we do get into that uncomfortable zone, just to sort of recollect and be like, actually, I am uncomfortable now, but this is only temporarily, because when I finish being in this space, unless I'm continuously doing the work, then I will continuously feel uncomfortable until I learn a way of how to deal with it and how to overcome it, and how to know that how I'm supporting and helping instead of not doing nothing about it. But then you still have, as a white person, we still, not we, but there's still that time that you can say, I can bring myself into that space and I can take myself out of that space. So it's just bearing in mind is that actually this may be uncomfortable now, but I can come out of that uncomfortable zone. And just thinking, like, sometimes that might be a willpower for someone to keep going, and thinking that, all right, I can put myself in that space because I know that I can take myself out of that space for a moment. Whereas if you think about it, is that this race is actually dealing with this discomfort continuous. So me being uncomfortable for a small amount of time, as much as I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm making a great difference. And I'm helping to hopefully, it might be 1% or even a point something percent, but the more people that does that work, it can help a big difference in regards to making these discomforts within that same community that they're supporting to slowly lift, because it's going to take a long load of work in regards to it would be something that not only that they will have to do themselves, eventually it'll be something that they'll be teaching their families, because when you start to become an ally, you start to call it out. And so sometimes it may start from calling it out at home, and then eventually challenging it at home, then it gives you that confidence to challenge it at work. Because sometimes if you've not felt that discomfort, then you don't know what you are challenging. Because if you haven't had to think of them experiences, or you ain't been exposed to their experiences of what has caused others to feel uncomfortable. So if you're not uncomfortable about it, then that means it's almost like it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone would agree, but it's like if you see that something's wrong and it's not caused you any discomfort, then that means it's like it's almost okay. It's just like me, if I go on the street and I saw that someone barged into not a black woman, but any elderly woman, I'm going to think to myself, oh my gosh, that's going to make me uncomfortable, and I'm going to want to challenge it, but it's going to be very uncomfortable at that time. Mm-hmm. But I'm challenging it because I want to put a stop to it. Whereas if it's not made me uncomfortable, I'm more likely to ignore it. So when we talk about that discomfort will be something that, as much as you can take yourself out of it, if you are willing to do the work and continuously willing to do the work, you're going to start to see it popping up a lot more where you feel uncomfortable, because you would also have the vision to look out for it, as well as the heirs. And sometimes when we're in our work environment, we would see sometimes we can see the biases. But if we're switched on to it and to know that this is not comfortable, we're more likely to then challenge it. And challenging that also can be uncomfortable. But that's why we need more, not just 1 or 2 or 3 allies. We need plenty more, so everyone is supporting each other. And it needs to not only be may I say, just say for instance, just doulas or just breastfeeding practitioners. It needs to be a lot more people in leaderships and organizations need to be also doing the work in regards to, being those allies, looking out for these things and having that zero tolerance. Because otherwise all it would be is that it would just continue. If we don't feel uncomfortable we would always feel uncomfortable to challenge something, because we know that it's not going to be maybe agreeing with someone, and it can cause a little bit of tension. But then to challenge it can help to put a stop to it. When it's not challenged, then it helps to allow it to continue.
Exactly. And I think like the more I do something, it becomes like a norm. Do you know what I mean? Because I've noticed that me and other white people, we have a tendency to freeze or to not do something out of fear of getting it wrong. And I think it's more important to do something and get it wrong and learn from it and keep doing it rather than not doing it out of fear of getting it wrong. But I think there's I can speak for a lot of white people, because they've told me that, we have a tendency to want cookies for doing something good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know where that comes from, but it's messed up. We just need to get on and do, like anything else in our life that is injustice. We just need to I don't know, keep doing the work and keep getting over ourselves. And it's fragility really, isn't it? Like white fragility, just being a bit fragile about everything.
Yeah, things that's maybe, goes against them, not defensive, goes, So what to round it up, it's very good having this conversation, and it's very great that you've been so open with this conversation, Lina. What would you recommend in regards to maybe practitioners, white breastfeeding practitioners, in regards to how they can be allies to other mothers that are of Black ethnics? What would you suggest, which is the way they should go about it? There's lots of different suggestions of how they can support mums, what they can do to change the way they practice, or what they can do to change their workspace to make it more inclusive to other mothers. But what would you suggest? There's no wrong or right.
I think it's really important to listen. So like there's so much out there now. There's so many people on Instagram that are sharing their stories on lives, like just listening to people's voices about how they experience certain things. I think that can be really powerful, because when you hear someone in pain or trauma, or describing something that has really affected them, it makes me as a practitioner not want to do it, not want to do that to anyone else. So like, even as a midwife before, I did things which now I regret. So like, when you can reflect on your practice, and maybe even role play is really powerful. Like if you're working in the practice, like doing role play with your co-workers and doing loads of different scenarios, then that can be really helpful. Like putting yourself in the place of the person and trying to imagine being in their skin, being in that person and receiving that treatment. I think that can be really powerful. What
definitely
else? I think as doulas as well, and anyone like in our work, in our life, like just educating ourselves about the things that we don't know. So like cultural safety training, or some kind of, you know, I like listen to a lot of audio books. Like if people don't like reading, I basically joined audio books, and I get through about one book a month for free. Like you join it and you pay and you get one a month, right? So I'm not going to read Black British history. It's like this big. I'll never read it. It's too big. But I can listen to it. And then the more you hear about everything in our history, then I can absorb it in my head. But when I'm reading a big fat book like that, I either stop reading it after about 2 chapters, or I cannot absorb the information. But when I listen to it, it's like, oh, it's very real to me. So just like learning by listening, or I think just incorporating things in our lives that maybe wouldn't be there without making an effort. I don't know how to say that, but you know, the more you see something, you can't unsee it. So then
it helps you to change your practice and what you do. You just become more conscious, isn't it? So and
wanting the best. I think if we get it right for Black and brown people, then it will be right for everybody.
Definitely it will be right for everybody, because to be honest, like, it's not to say that other people or other races are not having challenges within breastfeeding, but then in regards to communication, in regards to being listened to, the black people are less, they're on the bottom of the scale of the people that are able to receive some information, also that's being offered information or offered a support, or even in regards to being listened to. So if you can get it, definitely, if you can get it right with Black people, then you can definitely, it's going to just automatically be right with everybody else, because within the scale, I would say within regards to anything out there, that people is put on the lowest degree of who is, I would say, the most human people, because we wasn't even looked at as humans at one point. So where we've had that stigma, that stereotype, and sometimes there's still the stereotype of, you know, Black people are bad and all of these different things. And with having that, definitely, if you can get it right with us, then you can get it right with everybody else. And thank you so much for your time. It's not, this work is not easy work, but it has to be done, and it does take a lot of energy, not just from white people. It definitely takes a great amount of energy from Black people, because each time we are speaking about it, we are sort of visiting traumas and experiences that, not if it's that we've faced them directly, then it's our sisters or our brothers, or, you know, our friends or family members that have faced these experiences. And it's so real. And just to think about, you know, if the injustice is still here, it's still so present, then what are we going to have for our children? So the work needs to be done. Otherwise, it's just going to continue repeating itself over and over again throughout generations. But I'm thankful that you come and you spoke about this, and as a white woman as well, just to sort of speak about your view, what you do. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. It's not easy, but you are doing the work. And I really, my hands up for you doing that. Absolutely, yeah. I salute you, Lina.
Thank you for having me. I salute you too, and I just really appreciate. I know that it's a fine balance, really. It's a fine balance as a white person, because I know that we shouldn't be, you know, it's not my job to be teaching and educating, and I see the trauma. I think that's one of the hardest things for me, is I don't understand it, obviously, because I'm not in your skin and other people's skin, but when I see you and other Black and brown women and people educating, and men educating and taking time to educate, I just feel very grateful. It does make me sad and a bit sick sometimes, that I just feel a bit gutted that, you know, that you have to relive the trauma through educating us, when we are the ones that cause the harm and set up these horrible systems. But, you know, I think what our role then is to support and to get up and act, learning and doing the work. So I thank you for what you're doing for your community.
Thank you so much
for helping people like me to do the work, really.
Thank you. Well, it is, to be honest, we're all living amongst one another, so it's going to take everyone to do the work, to be honest. It all needs to be done throughout society, and yeah, it will take time, but yeah, eventually it needs to be from every direction, because we are exposed to everybody. We're not in areas where, you know, we haven't got Black-owned hospitals and spaces like that. So we are going to be in contact with other people. So everyone actually needs to learn and, you know, to make this to be a better space for people, make this world a better space.
Well, thanks so much there to the wonderful Lina, Duncan and Ruth Dennison for that recording. Lots of comments have been coming through to respond to. Ruth, I didn't know if you wanted to jump on and add anything to that, but thank you so much. So enlightening.
Hi, yeah, so I haven't really got anything much to say. It is very deep talk there, so it sort of like touched my womb. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything, then I'm happy to answer.
We've got lots of comments of what's been resonating. I'll scroll up so we can read from the top, but lots of praise for what Lina's been saying. Honesty and reflective practices with oneself are learning outcomes that some white people are resistant to. Your openness and honesty about your journey is inspiring. It's from Venetia.
Sent a message, Rosie.
Yes, go on, Nelsie.
No, I've sent a question.
Okay, let me scroll down and find it. What if you want to jump on and ask? That's also fine while I look through.
Okay, so Lina.
Lina's not here.
Yeah, she will catch up on the app on a later time. So if you have any questions, put them into a group, or you can direct message her on the app. But she's not here at the moment.
Okay, so really the question for her was, you know, I know she's very aware, but what I don't know is what made her aware of the issues. You know, how did she become aware of the issues?
I think it's this is my view, but I've never asked her this directly. But she's done a lot of work in India and in Asia, and I think where she was there, and she may have saw how they were treated over there, and I think that just maybe made her more culturally aware. Also, Lina goes to a church in Hackney, which is very mixed and has a lot of Black people there, so maybe that's another thing as well. So she has been around a lot of people from different races, so I'm sure that sometimes when she is around them, she may have found herself feeling a certain way about some of the injustice, just in general conversations. You know, it could be that we're walking down the street and maybe the police wanted to stop our children for no reason, and just little things like that. This is my perspective. I haven't actually had that deep talk with Lina, but I guess that some of these things could have triggered her to be more involved. And as she did say, is that when she as a doula, she came onto the birth and the Black breastfeeding event. I think that was our first event she mentioned that we did. that was based around the Black community within the birth world, and it could just be her willingness of wanting to learn, and you know, wanting to learn something that she's not. Sometimes it's, you want to learn something you don't really know much of, so you can perfect your work. And if you're passionate to making sure you want to work for everybody, you want to work the same for everyone and have equality within that, then it's going to make her want to work more or learn more within that field. But she did put herself in a space when she didn't know if she was going to have other white people around her, and that takes courage. But definitely leave that question in the group or in one of the chats, and then Lina would definitely, I'm sure she'll catch up with the conversation afterwards.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's just some other points that Natasha mentioned. It's so important to demonstrate support. Don't do it behind closed doors only. The importance of speaking up at the moment when it's needed, rather than adding comments that won't change things or shift power dynamics.
Yeah, and I think as well, what's important is to have an equal group of people that are doing this work together. So if you are in an organization or a company, you don't just have one person that is trying to help the company to be inclusive and having that diversity and promoting it, because then the others are not learning. And also in that group of people, try not to just get that one Black person in the company to be the face for that. Also as well, because sometimes there's a lot of pressure on that one Black person to take on the role of helping that company or that organization to be diverse. And then sometimes that work is really only coming from that one Black person. And also as well, they would put that person forward, even the NHS, they will put that person forward, but the actual leader, the main person that is the one that actually can help things to change, is really not very much interested, but they're happy to exploit the Black person that they can put forward and say, you know, you put on something for Black Breastfeeding Week, something like that. Just saying you put on Black Breastfeeding Week, but at the same time, that's what they did. They said, okay, you're the Black person, you like breastfeeding, you do that, but other than that, they ain't doing none of it themselves. It needs to be collaborative work. Then everyone needs to work together, and that would mean different races. And sometimes it's even though you may be working together, having the one Black person can sometimes be overbearing, because of, at the end of the day, if you think of how we have spoken about, Black people are less likely to be listened to. When you're in big organizations, and even though you're working together, having that one Black person or that one Asian person within that group of people in the leadership team, they are still more likely to not have their voices listened to. So even though they're there, it ends up becoming a tick box thing. They're there to show that we have diversity within our leadership team, but are the voices really going to be heard? So that's why you need to have equality around all the board of the actual management team. So if there's 5 of you, the maximum white women should be is 3, at least. If there's 5, or try and have it as, you know, to be equal. I'm saying 3, reason why, because predominantly in this country we have majority of the white people within the leadership team, but we're not going to say, okay, now we're not going to have no white people in the leadership team. They will still be there. They have their reasons of being there, they know their job, but then we want to make it inclusive and we want to have that diversity. So we need to bring more people of color to have it as an equal base, so everyone can share this information together, everyone can agree together, and agreement is going to be more productive between people of different backgrounds, when they can contribute together and there isn't any biases. Because if you've got an equal amount of people within the team, then of different races, there's less likely to be any biases going on, and it's more likely to be called out.
Thank you, Ruth. Comment here from Mama Midula: being exploited and not paid for the emotional labor. Also, you don't always get the recognition for the work and emotional work or effort you have put in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so that is something that I would say that white people need to look at and think, like, you know, how do we ensure that if they're doing this work, which is on the same level that we're doing, you definitely get something for it. Because if you're not doing it for nothing, why should a Black person do it for nothing? And then also as well, as Black people, we need to also say, you know, I'm not, like, as much as sometimes we do want to rise in our roles, But you've got to realize at some point, am I rising and not achieving anything in regards to what am I gaining from it, apart from the knowledge? So, say for instance, I can put me in perspective. When I firstly was working within the NHS, I started off wanting to be a midwife. Didn't want to be a midwife anymore because I thought the midwives work so hard. They're barely with the mums. I'm with the mums more than the midwives are with the mums. Especially when I was first started, I was on a postnatal ward, and I was with the mums more than the midwives were. And they're always doing discharges, drugs, drug rounds. So all of these things, different things, take away their hands-on care. The care support for the mums wasn't there. So as a maternity care assistant at that time, I was able to give the mums a lot more support and care, and nurturing them and supporting them with breastfeeding and having that time for them. And so I was like, oh, I don't really like. At first, I was like, yeah, I want to be a midwife. I want to do this. And then afterwards, when I had my first baby and I came back, I was like, I wasn't too sure, and I signed up to midwifery. Then I got pregnant again. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. And then after that, I was like, actually, I want to focus on, when I was in my pregnancy, I said, I want to focus on breastfeeding, because no one is really like, I've been doing so much with breastfeeding, and I was kind of scared that if these women don't have anyone else that is dedicated to breastfeeding, they ain't going to like get that far, because in the hospital it's really like maybe 2% of people that are really dedicated with breastfeeding and can really support a mother. And then other than that, everyone's just like, oh, put your baby on the boob. Oh yeah, it's supposed to hurt. Oh, it's meant to be this.
Ruth, Ruth, can I just say something?
Yeah.
So I honestly, I agree with you. And in the world of midwifery now, there is this move to have midwifery ambassadors. But to be honest, I would discourage anybody I know to join the profession the way it is. There is a lot of bullying, harassment. It is dreadful, some of the things that midwives have to go through, including student midwives.
Especially,
if you look on you look on the Facebook page, and especially if you're Black, I mean, it is a nightmare. But having said that,
somebody needs to do that work.
Yeah, but what I see now is that, yes, we've got really great doulas, we've got a lot of support workers, we're empowering women, or women are empowering themselves, that we don't empower people. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you, if we do not have good midwives who are conscientious and willing to work and challenge poor practice inside the system, damage is done to women that is irreparable. We cannot repair it. So when you come to see a woman who's been damaged, so for example, a primate, there's loads of cesarean sections going on for first-time mothers. The uterus is cut. We cannot uncut that uterus. And then it creates a lot of problems later on for women. So, it's a double-edged sword, but, like, what is the solution? And I guess that's the solution I'm working on, because great doulas, but the other things, I don't know where it's going to end, to be honest.
Yeah, it's so true what you're saying. It's so true what you're saying. Yeah, but the way the hospital in-house is very difficult as well, because they're always lacking with staff. With the lack of staff brings stress, because the job is very demanding. So everyone's stressed out, and that's what causes a lot of bullying. It causes a lot of staff to hide and not do some jobs. So, and you have a team. Sometimes you can have a team that is amazing, and then when your day is not going to be good, and you're going to literally be running the ward by yourself, because of, you can see that some staff, they just don't love their job anymore. And I think so management maybe need to look at that a little bit more closely, to see if their staff are enjoying themselves. Instead of doing this appraisal and just being like, where do you want to be afterwards, and just ticking the boxes, they need to really sort of be and speak with their staffing. They need to do some more around their staffing, because if the staff feel good about how they're being cared for, they start to do good work. When they feel that they're just left to just get on with it and just treated like a number, which is very much within the NHS system, then they start to act like a number, like, oh, well, I don't really need to do anything, I just need to be here kind of attitude, or do what I have to do, tick the boxes, not actually care. And so so many issues going on in there. But that's what where I just saw that the midwives looked so stressed out. I was like, I don't want to be a midwife anymore. I'll just focus on breastfeeding. And then that's when I went into starting up my own breastfeeding thing. And I thought I want to do more. Then I became a doula, and then I just been doing a lot more work. And yeah, since then. And but yeah, it's, I forgot the actual question. What was firstly said? I think it was a demonstration. It's to demonstrate. And yeah, if you're not got people within the hospital demonstrating good practice, then that's another thing. There's not many people that would demonstrate good practice. They may know what to do, but sometimes they can't be bothered to teach others, and they'll just do what they have to do, or they even just start to do things their own way after a while and pick up bad habits. So it is very important for students to learn and to be able to follow good role models within the industry, so we can create the good stuff in midwives and so. And yeah, everyone should be for the work. Sorry.
I'd have got that in this little face.
But there's lots to be said. I'm going to stop talking now because I'm a chatterbox.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for all that you do, for all that you've shared here right now, and you've given us a lot of food for thought. One thing that came through your conversation with Lina that I just wanted to flag was also this sitting with discomfort when we're looking at these issues, and how we need to, all of us, be more comfortable in occupying that space and holding space for ourselves and one another in trying to.
There you go.
I think Aisha's just been muted there. But there was another comment. I don't know if we're going to have time to unpack, but if you've got a short response for this, Ruth. Layla wrote, what happens when the other people of colour aren't applying to these leadership roles in terms of stepping up, in terms of looking at
do you mean the other people of colour, or people of colour in general don't apply for
colour aren't stepping up into leadership roles? So
when they are applying, well, sometimes you need to give some motivation of maybe what the benefits are. But you know what happens? A lot of the time, the leadership roles that are actually being released, they will be released in-house, and you know, they will be told, the white staff will be told, you know, this job is coming, go for it. And sometimes they already know the job is there. Yes, we need to encourage staff to take these leadership roles, but you know what ends up happening with some of the staff? The more higher they get, if they are of color, then the more they're likely to sometimes be in a position to lose their role. And that's because of sometimes what happens is that they give them an extremely high workload as being a person of color. So they're more in, like, as I don't know if you've heard me mention before, but we are more likely to be in the high risk areas where things go wrong. We are more likely to have our names passed over to say that we have caused problems, or, you know, put this person at risk. So when you have all of these things that are weighing up against you, sometimes you feel like, do I really want to take that job? Because if I take that job, it might be more money, but like I know I'm gonna have a whole load more stress. Whereas if a white person were to take that role, they're not gonna have the same amount of stress that the black person's gonna have to manage, or an Asian person maybe to have to manage that area. So that's why the leadership needs to be from the top. And there are a lot of staff that do go. I know there's been senior staff that do go for leadership roles, but then they will always end up getting a white person to fill the role. There's a lot of senior staff role that has been, I've seen it, where they've been in senior positions, black staff that's been in senior positions for years, and what they do a thing called where they deploy you. So they start doing, we need to put out a new role. So your role's no longer a role. We're going to put out a new role. If you want this role that is similar to your role, you'll have to go for an interview. And then sometimes they feel like, well, I've had this job, I've been doing this job, and now you're going to demote me and tell me I need to go for an interview. So it sort of causes them to give up. And then what ends up happening, they end up getting some new student to go into that senior role that half of the time they don't really know what they're doing very much, but they would get the support because of the color of their skin, they would get the support from the other seniors that would help them, and they also cover up things for them when they're doing things that are wrong. They will cover it up. Unfortunately, it's happened many times. And if you're a black person, do one thing, you drop a pen on the floor and they'll throw you under the bus. So it's like, if we're gonna have it like that, you have to really, like, not everyone has that strength within them to say, well, I'm going to do it, and I know that when I do, I'm going to be on point. I'm not going to not take no slack from nobody, and I'm going to make sure I'm focusing on the quality. You do have staff members like that, and those are the ones that you normally do see, the black staff members that end up in that senior roles. But not every black person has that energy to take that on.
Thank you so much.
Question.
That's my perspective.
Question.
I think we might need to move on, Mum Alice. Can I ask that we carry this on after, because I think it's a really important conversation looking systemically at employment and positions and power within this. Ruth, do you think we can take this forward and open up a section in the community group to have a discussion around this particular issue?
Can I just say?
Yeah, of course.
That we have begun that work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to invite Ruth to come and join that piece of work.
That's good. That's a great result and connection.
I've got an invite, Elsie.
I'm so sorry, what?
Sorry?
I didn't hear what you said just now.
Did you just invite me to do some work?
Yes.
Okay. I'll take up your invite. You have to let me know some more.
I will do that outside of this. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elsie, and thank you, Ruth, as well.